Here is KFOG General Manager Tony Salvador.
Thanks. I want to talk about Kfog. All of us here think we've got a pretty decent radio station.
Pack Up the Plantation Live, the name of the LP, the track. So you want to be a rock and roll star. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers with M on Kfog. End it. Come on, guys. Bam. Yeah.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock and time for the Kfog Cavalcade of News with Scoop Nisker.
Foghead, it's time for more tales of civilization and its discontents. Tales told by an idiot. And I'll be back in 10 with traffic. Now here's M with music, Kfog 104.5.
A little more.
Ow. Lee Michaels on Kfog 104.5, Fogheads. And open up the door to the Kfog kitchen and feed the king on Breakfast with Elvis. Coming up next.
Away.
Hello, piece of milk, Peter. Yeah, this is the Elvis. Won't you bring me over a couple large pies?
All right. Hello, is it working? Hi, Mom. Oh, damn it. Yes, I'm speaking. Anybody seeing a radio engineer? Oh, my God, look at that. All right, hot damn. You know what happened? We had so much high-powered personality in the room, we blew one of their circuit breakers. And they had to wait for PG&E to get here. That, by the way, the blast of the foghorn, that's the original foghorn from Kfog. It is, yes. If at first you don't succeed, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this lovely luncheon. Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame's legendary radio station of the year. I'm Peter Cleveland. I'm the president of the Broadcast Legends, your host for today. Quick housekeeping note. You may have noticed a couple of people going around peeking at what you have in front of you, the little ticket. So put it out there, because that helps them know what it is you want to eat. And in addition to that, there are little blue tickets in front of you. And guard that with your life. If somebody comes to take it, hit them with a fork or whatever. Because that little blue ticket, there'll be a drawing. And the winning ticket holders will take home a specially produced Kfog Live from the Archive CD, compliments of Jude Heller and Sherry Nelson, and that's nothing to, so that's pretty cool. All right, let's see, okay. As we do at all our luncheons, we take a few moments to remember those who have left us since last we met. Jim Dunbar, I met Jim Dunbar in 1963. I never knew that within 4 years I'd be working with him, and almost for a whole decade. Jim had come to KGO from WLS in Chicago, and before that DSU in New Orleans, where he replaced a guy by the name of Dick Van Dyke, who left New Orleans to go to New York. KGO radio in the early years was, to put it kindly, a dog. It had no identity, didn't know who it was, the radio's people didn't know, the listeners didn't know what it was. So ABC Brass brings in Dunbar. His main thing was to beat Sherwood, but he did wonders for the radio station. Even found time to walk through the labyrinths that was the KGO studios in those days to the television side to work on television as well. But radio was his first love. Had been when he was in school at Michigan State and in the Army at Fort Riley, Kansas. In all the years I knew Jim Dunbar, over 50 years, I never saw him angry. Now, he may have gotten angry inside Mickey Lakoff's office or before that, Eddie McLaughlin's office, but not in public. Jim himself, of course, many of you will remember, became the story in 1973 when a deranged man took a couple of shots at him through the bulletproof glass of the studios that we had right at street level on Golden Gate Avenue. The gunman then entered the station's office, killed one of our salesmen, Ben Munson, wonderful man. And they ran around the corner. Ron Denman chased him, and he ran into an alcove of the law school and put the gun to his head and ended everybody's misery. ABC had originally, as I said, sent Dunbar out here to take on Sherwood. He won that one. He won it easy. In fact, because of him, KGO Radio was #1 in the books for over 25 years. After he retired in 2000, he kept doing a talk show for the good folks of San Mateo County, where I happen to live, at senior centers around the county. He said, "It keeps me sharp," he told me one time. Jim was a member of both the National Radio Broadcasters Hall of Fame and the Bay Area Radio Hall. He died peacefully, old age, April 22nd. Jim Dunbar was 89 years old. Another longtime Legends member and friend of many of us, Ed Arno, passed away at his home in Discovery Bay on April 14th. He was a native of the Bronx, and he had that kind of Bronx feel to him all the time I knew him. He had degrees from Syracuse, Stanford, San Francisco State, and a career that spanned 4 decades. Here in San Francisco, he worked for the old KNBC before it became KNBR. That's where I met him. And then at KPIX, KTO, Quran. In the 1950s, he worked for NBC News as a correspondent, posted to Buenos Aires for a number of years as a correspondent there. He also spent time teaching at Cal Berkeley. Moving back to local news in 1970, he won a shelf full of awards and became a friend and mentor to many people. Ed Arno died in his sleep. He was 95. Finally, Peter Mark Boehm died of a heart attack at his home in Roseville on May 17th. Peter grew up in New Jersey, moved with his family to the Bay Area in 1958. While in school at Sacramento State, he held a bunch of part-time radio jobs. His first full-time gig was at KLIV in 1968. After San Jose became stations in Seattle, Madison, Wisconsin, Salt Lake City. Then, after being out of the business for a number of years, he returned to his roots in 2012 with a nightly program on an internet streaming service which continues till his passing. Peter Boehm, given the name Mr. Smooth by Terry McGovern, was 73. A moment, if you would. For those of you who are regulars at these luncheons, you know that our newscast always comes after lunch. Well, not today. In order to give our panelists here more time to tell you wonderful stories, and some of which may even be true, about Kfog, we're going to do the newscast right now. And our newscasters, Mr. Don Sanchez, Mr. Jim Vargas. Gentlemen.
Good afternoon, I'm Jim Vargas.
And I'm Don Sanchez. We're here to bring you the latest headlines from 1963. The biggest news of the year, of course, occurred on November 22nd, the assassination of U.S. President John F. Kennedy by Lee Harvey Oswald in Dallas, Texas.
And perhaps you remember Oswald was shot and killed by Jack Ruby, an event seen around the world live. Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in as the President of the United States and soon confirmed the U.S. would continue to support South Vietnam militarily and economically.
More politics. George Wallace became the governor of Alabama, and in his inaugural speech, defiantly complained, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. You can boo as long as you want, obviously. Thank you. That's enough.
In the better news category, Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique, launched the reawakening of the women's movement in the United States and keyed the revival of women's organizations all across the country. Okay.
We have calmer news. At Alcatraz Federal Prison on San Francisco Bay, the last 27 prisoners were transferred elsewhere by order of the U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. By the way, on November 21st, 1963, a former inmate of the Rock died. His name was Robert Stroud, but of course he was better known as the Birdman of Alcatraz. Though he was never allowed to have birds there, Stroud was sentenced to federal prison in 1909. At the age of 19, he never saw freedom again.
He had birds in the movie. Anyway, on July 1st, 1963, the U.S. Post Office made news. Yes, the creaky old post office came up with something new. Anyone want to guess? They instituted the Zone Improvement Code. You may know it better as a zip code.
This was also the year that your telephone company, better known as AT&T, announced that customers in the United States were able to install push-button telephones. So they could do this instead of doing this. We want to thank AT&T for keeping my fingers numb.
We were reading books in 1963, bestsellers including The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, The Feminine Mystique, Planet of the Apes, Confessions of an Advertising Man, The Graduate, Barefoot in the Park, and The Bell Jar.
And gathering our attention as well were a mixed bag of films that year. The Great Escape, The Pink Panther, HUD, The Birds, Cleopatra, To Kill a Mockingbird, McClintock, From Russia with Love, and the Academy Award winner picture of that year. Any guesses? I guess not. No, it was Lawrence of Arabia. Ooh.
Men and women in 1963 did more than talk on the phone and go to the movies. They had kids. The following well-known people were born in 1963. Actor, director, writer Quentin Tarantino, basketball players Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley, actress Gail O'Grady, TV talk show host Conan O'Brien, and actor Greg Kinnear.
But wait, there is more, sir. There was also the actress Lisa Kudrow, Warriors basketball star Chris Mullin, the late singer and actress Whitney Houston, and actress Helen Hunt.
Broadcast Legends is written, produced, and directed by Jim Schock. Right over there.
Aha.
Who does an awful lot of other scribbling and is going to work on his newscast. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Jim Vargas.
And I'm Don Sanchez, and now we return to our regularly scheduled program.
All right. Back to the script. Back to the script. Oh, I know. Enjoy your lunch. We'll be back after. See ya. Well, I hope you all enjoyed your lunch. The wine was to your liking? All right, okay. Hey, we try to please around here. I hope you did enjoy your lunch. Now for the main event. A celebration of the Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame's legendary station of the year for 2019. Kfog. I used to be able to do that. I can't do it. Finch, I'm sorry, Peter. I can't do it anymore. It's gone. Much better. Thank you very much. To get the party started, here's our good friend, Steve Cushman.
Peter, it's too big for me. I'm short guy. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. A couple of just personal comments. I'm a San Francisco native, and there aren't many of us left. Growing up and listening to radio throughout my life in the city, there were the stations that stick out in your mind. When I was a kid, it was KYA, KFRC, and KWB in your KWB Rich card. And it was KSFO for baseball in Sherwood. And then when KSAN came around, there was nothing to listen to but KSAN. And when KSAN went away, we had a little city, we had a little quake. But when Kfog came, that's the station that took me through most of my adult life. And the station I'm proud here to honor. So, the California Historical Radio Society and our Bay Area Radio Museum and Hall of Fame are proud to celebrate San Francisco's KFOG 104.5 as the recipient of the Legendary Station Award for 2019. The award focuses on Kfog during its era as the home of quality rock and roll and world-class rock, with an emphasis on the people who helped build it into one of America's truly legendary stations. Brief history. Don't want to bore you. The station was originally known as K-Bay when it went on the air on February 4th, 1960, under the ownership of Cheryl Corwin playing good music. K-Bay was sold to Kaiser Broadcasting, became Kfog, and debuted in March 1963 with Pete Taylor as PD and under the management of Dick Block. It began stereo broadcasting at that time. The studios were at 420 Taylor Street in the old NBC building. In 1964, Kfog moved to Ghirardelli Square. Kfog made an immediate impact on Bay Area listeners with its tasteful palette of music, interspersed with station breaks that featured the mournful moan of an actual foghorn, a signature still heard today on 104.5. Through the 60s and into the 70s, Kfog remained a stalwart, easy listening station. In 1974, Kaiser Broadcasting sold Kfog to General Electric. Less than 10 years after, GE decided to scrap good music and sold Kfog to Susquehanna Broadcasting. It was September 16th, 1982, that Kfog switched to rock. Under the management of Tony Salvador, Dave Logan took the reins as program director. Kfog quickly positioned itself and rocketed to new heights of popularity with a talented team of announcers, with innovative branding and promotions, and with community involvement. During this time, Kfog was awarded the prestigious Marconi Award for Station Excellence. And now back to a couple of personal comments. The California Historical Radio Society is very proud to have been working with ex-Kfog people and for quite a while now in our efforts to preserve radio. We have to thank Peter Finch and Renee and Dave Morey and Rosalie, all of who, and I'm sure I'm leaving out other people, all of who are supporting CHRS's efforts to preserve radio. Bill Ruck, absolutely. Peter Finch, I'm so sorry, Peter. So in one way or another, all these people have helped us in our efforts. So it's a pleasure to be here, you know, with my pals, essentially. Okay, Mr. Bob. And now we take you back to September 16th, 1982, when Kfog moved into the home of quality rock and roll.
Currently around the Bay, it's 67 degrees in Oakland, in San Rafael 71, San Jose has 67, and in the city we have 62 degrees. The time is 11:59. I'm Greg Roberts for Kfog. KFOG San Francisco, FM 104.5. All music, all the time.
.5 Kfog.
Yesterday
started out very confused, but it's going to get a lot better. At 104.5 Kfog, started out with new music from the Stray Cats. Not only a new tune, but attitude around here called Rock This Town. We heard from the Beatles, Tom Petty, Joe Jackson, and ended up with the Police. We are 104.5 Kfog, and you would like to welcome us to San Francisco. My name is Dave Morey. I'm going to be doing 10 to 3 for the next 30 years or so, I hope. Anyway, stick around. It's going to be a genuine experience. Everybody's been saying that lately. You can believe me. Lee Baby Sims will be doing morning drives around here. One of the things he'll be doing is bringing in his own records. Just one a day for the dreaded morning oldie. It's the DMO, and it's featured exclusively right here on Kfog. That's Lee Baby Sims. He'll be here tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, the DMO at 7:05. And I don't have any weather. Doesn't matter, though. It's nice, few clouds, and about 68 at 104.5 Kfog with new music from Rush.
And now let me introduce you to our moderator for the afternoon, a man of many questions and hopefully many answers, Mr. Ben Fong Torres.
Thank you. Is this here?
Yes, you can.
All right, thank you. Oh, it's good to see you. And not have to write about you.
Oh, we miss you.
We miss radio waves.
Tell the Chronicle. Welcome to the Kfog Tribute, or as it appears to be now, a kind of a reunion.
Yeah.
Really? Although with Kfog, it's more of a high school reunion. I'm here primarily to try to win the raffle for those CDs.
Yes.
But they thought they would keep me busy before the raffle, which will be taking place right as we wrap up this panel discussion. So you heard September 16th, 1982, and when Kfog flipped, it was in a market that had already had 3 rock stations. What were they? KMEL, KRQR.
And the Quake.
And who?
The Quake.
The Quake was doing it. Kfog carved out his own share of the ratings and revenue pie. It did it with strong announcers from early voices like Amir Mansbach and Lee Baby Sims, Bill Fury, Bob Acton, and of course Dave Morey, and the wonderful M. Dung. Voices like Trish Robbins and Bonnie Simmons, Renee, Rosalie, and Annalisa.
Yeah.
And another person who couldn't afford a second name, Webster. And a guy who had 2 first names, Irish Greg.
Yes.
They went from Sky Daniels and Big Rick to John Rivers and John Grappone. Scoop, Richard Gossett, Kim Wonderly, Kevin the Rat, Mike Schumann, John Evans, Dusty Rhodes, Marshall Phillips, Peter Finch. I left out 30, so fuck me. I'm not writing with the Chronicle anymore. That first voice, Dave Morey, blossomed as a morning anchor and producer and host of a 10 at 10 feature. Yeah. Kfog did it with a mix of thoughtfully curated music and programming elements that attracted baby boomers with outreach to the community, forming a listenership that became known as, of course, Fogheads. It was world-class rock from a world-class station, at least for those 34 years, from 1982 to 2016. All right, here we have assembled a panel. They're all here. Should I take a roll? No.
Yeah.
Okay, we're here. Dave Logan was the first program director of the Kfog era. That we are honoring today. He came to San Francisco in fall of 1982 from Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he studied advertising and did DJ work. He then worked at the Loop in Chicago before returning to Michigan and then coming to San Francisco. He led Kfog until December 1983 when he moved to Atlanta to be vice president of the AOR division of Superstars. That's the format from Burkhart Abrams that brought Kfog initial success. He returned to Kfog from late 1985 through 88. He has also been a PD at WNEW in New York, and he helped launch XM Satellite Radio, radio's best friend. All right. Bill Rock. is a native San Franciscan, has been a broadcast engineer since the mid-'70s. His engineering career includes KUSF, KJazz, KALW, NPR West, and Susquehanna Radio for 21 years, Kfog, KNBR, KSAN, and The Ticket as engineering manager. Bill is the Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame 2014 engineer inductee chosen by Chapter 40 of the Society of Broadcast Engineers. He lives in the Sunset District of San Francisco and is restoring a family cabin in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
Wow. Cool.
With his own transmitter, no doubt, for Dave Morey to use. Rosalie Howard grew up in Monterey. Yeah, Morey needs a third illegal station. Rosalie grew up in Monterey, snuck into the famous pop festival there in 1967, and then ran away to the Haight-Ashbury. She joined Kfog in 1983 doing weekend overnights and wound up serving at various times as full-time overnights, weekends, fill-in, or interim at pretty much every shift. She was also public service director and was assistant producer on the Live from the Archive CD series, but is best known as producer and host of Acoustic Sunrise. Yeah. That show lasted 27 years, even outlasting the format change into alt rock. Jude Heller. Hey, Jude. She joined Kfog in 1992, working in promotions and marketing. In her 15 years there, she's credited with creating and or producing events like Kaboom, the alternative fireworks show, neatly tied to a Kfog soundtrack, and the Live from the Archives CD series, which has raised millions of dollars for Bay Area food banks. Before Kfog, she'd done marketing and licensing work at various companies, including Lucasfilms and Bill Graham Presents. After Kfog, it was all broadcasting at Entercom and at CBS, where she is sales marketing manager for CBS 5. Peter Finch.
Peter.
He first got paid, he wrote, to talk on the radio when he was a high school junior living in Santa Maria, California. Santa Maria! High school junior. Upon his graduation from San Francisco State, Peter landed a job as a weekend overnight jock on the Camel, KMEL, back when it was rockin' the Bay. The bulk of his career, though, has been, as you know, spent as the morning news guy on adult album alternative stations, first at the legendary KBCO in Boulder, Colorado, and then, KBCO, good station. I never heard it. And then, before streaming, it was BS. And then on Kfog for 18 years, beginning in 1993. Peter has come full circle in his career and is now the weekend overnight news anchor on KCBS.
I hear him.
Renee Richardson. She was part of the Kfog family for 17 years, most of them on the morning show, anchored by Mr. Morey. She also worked as music director, and before Kfog in 1999, she was Renee Rotten on Live 105. Your fan club is here.
My mentor.
Backseat Betty on the Ticket 1050.
Yep.
And Renee LaRue on KALW. You can hear her on Sundays now on The Crush in Santa Rosa, and monthly as co-host of Renee and Irish Greg's pop-up show.
Thank you, babe.
Online everywhere. Good Facebook page, too. By day, Renee is Associate Director of Metallica's All Within My Hands Foundation. Her job is to give away the heavy metal band's money.
Nice gig.
Get in line. I'm your moderator. I'm a Kfog alumnus of the first class, the one that played beautiful music. I had the all-night shift during the Summer of Love, 1967.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was weird. Going from marijuana to Mancini.
That's what it takes.
11:30. Ah, man, I gotta go. Where's Ghirardelli Square, man? All right. With the new Kfog, I did a couple of specialty shows like the Archives Hour with Bonnie Simmons. Yeah. And Kfog Rarities, a Bill Kafuri feature earlier on. I also went to London with M's morning show to help conduct interviews. Thanks to John Rivers for that gig. And before Kfog, I was on KSAN. After Kfog, I've been programming and DJing for the online Moon Alice Radio.
Yeah.
All right, let's begin at the beginning, and that would have to be with the one with the grayest hair. Oh, we have a three-way tie here.
I still got it.
Yeah, still got tons.
And we're talking about the women only there. No, Logan. So that switchover in September 1982, what kind of responses did you or Dave Morey, who was, I guess, on the phones in the studio that day, what kind of response did you get from the listeners?
My favorite story of that day was being in my office at Ghirardelli and getting a call, and this is before direct phones to anybody. You know, the receptionist picked up the phone. She says, there's a lady on line 1 wants to talk to you. Sure. Hi, are you the program director? Yes. Can I help you, ma'am? She goes, yes, there's a Mexican station jamming your signal. And I said, really? I said, and I thought we weren't playing Wall of Voodoo at the time, so that couldn't be that. I said, how do you know it's a Mexican station, ma'am? She goes, that music is not from around here. So that was day one. And, you know, the great thing about that day was, you know, we'd built up and it really worked hard to get the radio station ready to go. And the very first person I hired the day after I got hired was Dave Morey.
Yeah. Good move.
Dave and I had known each other in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I was honored to induct him into this Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame several years ago. And we've known each other for more than 40 years. Wow. And he is just as tremendous as they come.
Yeah, he was already in the market as Dave Kent.
Yes, and I called him up and I said, hey, what are you doing? He goes, oh, they just changed formats on my station. I'm on the beach. And I said, well, guess what? I said, there's a new station coming to town, Kfog, and we're going to be playing rock. And he goes, that's just what this town needs. Another goddamn rock station. I said, but wait, I'm the program director and I want to hire you. He goes, that's just what this town needs. Another great rock station. So literally within an hour of being hired, I hired Dave. And we hung out and renewed our friendship, which had come and gone as we were going in radio directions in our careers. And I'll never forget the day we went up to his apartment in Novato. And Dave had a closet in the guest bedroom that was just full of these tapes that he'd saved. He's an archivist extraordinaire. And that's where we came up with the idea for 10 at 10. And 10 at 10 was, just on paper, it said 10 great songs from one great year. And as we were going through there, and Dave had old 7-Up jingles from the 70s. And all sorts of stuff on these little 5-inch reel-to-reels, and we kind of came up with this idea of how can we make this a very cinematic and entertaining show. And we just kind of left it to Dave. And then we got Don Pardo involved, and the rest is history. And I find it ironic that today in Chicago, the #1 rated hour on the top rock station in Chicago is 10 at 10, done by a guy named Bob Stroud. The show has been replicated, not as well, around the country millions of times. But there's only one Dave Morey. And,
that's right. Logan, before, you gave me the perfect cue for a 10 at 10 audio bite, but Bob, we'll hold off because I want to ask you. Before. One quick question, though. It wasn't just a rock station that you were building at Kfog. It was a planned Superstars 2 format from Abrams Burkhart.
Yes,
can you explain briefly what that is?
Lee Abrams really had the idea for what this format was. And I had been working as a client of theirs in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Dung worked there with me. And John Rivers had also worked with us in Grand Rapids. His brother and I were roommates in college. That's how I met John. But Lee had this idea for a station that didn't play a lot of the corporate rock that was kind of everywhere at the time. Foreigner, Journey, REO Speedwagon.
Yeah.
And that was kind of tough in San Francisco to have to go to Herbie Herbert's office and tell him we weren't playing Journey. But he was cool about it. And the idea was that it was a rock station that appealed to adults. We didn't care about teens. We weren't going to play heavy metal, although the Rush song there was more progressive, we thought, than it was at the time. And we just felt that there was a chance that you could play a lot of wide variety of music and have engaging and entertaining personalities. And then Dave and Em helped build the production library that became a hallmark of the radio station. And so what we did was we hired the smartest people we could find. And that was people like Rosalie. We had, of course, Dave. We had a guy named Amir Mansbacher, who was just tremendous in afternoons. A woman named Michelle Michaels, who started at nights. She's been doing middays in Pittsburgh, #1, for 25 years since she left us. But we just put them in there, and we had a series of about 2,000 songs in a card system. And all we did was told the jocks that this is how it should sound. We want it to be entertaining. We want you to feel like you're sharing your favorite music with these people. And we didn't tell them what they had to play when, but we said it should kind of be in this order, but they picked it. And, everybody sits there and thinks that we had some kind of major brainstorming session to play Rock This Town first, but that was just Dave picking the first card in the category and being Dave. So.
But you peppered the programming with stuff that boomers could relate to.
Oh, the TV themes.
Yeah. Rodney Dangerfield drop-ins.
Yeah, Rodney did the TV commercial for us. Us old rockers don't get no respect. I don't want to get off on too many stories, but there's a great one about that that involved him thinking that we were going to show up with cocaine.
No respect at all.
But... and a female production assistant who he thought was there for another purpose. But it was a crazy time. But it was made wonderful by the people who were there.
Yeah.
And as much as Lee had the idea, we always make the joke that Lee writes the recipe and I cook the meal. It was the people of the Kfog staff who made the radio station exceptional and special, and nobody ever came up and said, hey, I want to meet the program director. It was like, I want to meet Dave Morey, and who's Amir Mansbacher, and who are all the other people that eventually came along, John Russell, and people Bonnie Simmons. We hired the select K-San people, like Ben and Bonnie and Scoop, who we felt could bring something to what we were doing. And it was important for us to get those kind of people involved with that because we needed to be a native radio station because so many of us weren't.
All right, let's go back to 10 at 10 that you mentioned. It'll be a near perfect bridge to our next panelist who was there in the earliest of time. So, if we can now have number 2.
From Kfog, it's 10 at 10, with 10 great songs from one great year. This is Don Pardo, and now here's your host for 10 at 10, Dave Morey.
Finally, Friday, friends at home and friends in the studio, and I think today just might be...
Surprise, surprise, surprise. Happy birthday.
Well, sort of, anyway. This Sunday is our chief engineer, Bill Ruck's... Hold on just a second. Okay, this Sunday is our chief engineer, Bill Ruck's birthday, and since we get Sunday off, we thought that we should take some sort of preventative maintenance and say happy birthday to Bill today. So happy birthday, Bill, and we hope you have a real nice day. And must be a problem with this microphone.
Ladies and gentlemen, won't you please...
Don, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, Bill is the guy responsible for making sure a lot of things people here ask him to do. I remember one time Raquel even brought in her toaster and asked Bill to fix it, and he did. So he's a good guy. But most importantly, Bill always remembers that his first priority, job number on air sound here at Kfog. So today, Bill, we want to say happy birthday to you, Bill Ruck.
Let's spin the big wheel and see which year we land on today, Dave.
Hey, Don, your mic is dead. No, all you got to do is wiggle that wire right there. Okay, hold it right there. And you were saying, Mr. Pardo?
Let's spin the big wheel and see which year we land on today, Dave.
And I have a premonition, since we seem to be having some problems with our microphones this morning. Fate may be getting ready to stick its fickle finger into the big wheel right about here, where the pointer reads...
Today we are strictly instrumental on 10 at 10.
Which means we can send our microphones to the shop, since there are no lyrics allowed. Right, Don?
That's right, Dave.
Don? I think my headphones went dead. Don?
I guarantee you none of that was in any memo that I wrote.
Sounds like a broadcast legends luncheon.
Snap.
All we got was lunch, so who cares? Hey, so Ruck, there you are. Happy birthday again. What was the Pete Taylor, by the way, is around and says congratulations, and he wanted to say hi to you. He was the original program director of the original Kfog from back in 1963 and remembers Mr. Ruck. So, Bill, what was the thinking at whether it's GE or Susquehanna about the need to change formats? You were there for that.
Well, it was one of the interesting things when I started at Kfog playing beautiful music. The station lost money every year and had been losing money every year for many years. And every year they would say, oh, we're going to do much better. And the management at GE Broadcasting said, okay. And then we would lose 7 figures the next year. Well, finally, they changed the president of General Electric Broadcasting, brought in a guy named Randy Baumgartner. And Randy was a radio guy. And Randy said, on my watch, we're not going to lose money. So things started changing at Kfog. They still stay with beautiful music, but they brought in Tony Salvador. And Tony, one of the things he said to me one day, and I'll leave out his favorite word, was, you know, Ruck, I got salespeople to turn in bigger expense accounts than sales reports. So things started to change. I started getting hints that there would be major changes coming down. And one day we had a staff meeting. Randy comes to town and says, we're changing format. And I had 2 weeks to rebuild the closet we called Studio A for rock and roll. And that's when I met Dave Logan. So that's basically the short version of the story.
Wow. And as an engineer, you have apparently inspired a number of stories. Rosalie has a few for you, but I'll begin with one that Bill Kafuri told recently about about spilling a cup. This is in the rock era, I'm pretty sure, right, Bill? He was in the studio by himself, and he spilled a cup of coffee onto and into a turntable, and it began to spin at about 3 times 33 1/3. This is late at night, and he called you in. Do you remember any of that?
If you're an engineer, it's a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour-a-day job. But Bill had this routine where I got my shoes off and we're enjoying things and life was good. And then he called me up, and so I went in there and he can tell the story really better than I can. But anyway, Bill said, "What can I do?" And I said, "Get out the newspapers and look in under the jobs wanted."
But you fixed things anyway. You worked out at the production studio, and I think Kafiri started to find every song he could find that included the F word. Dire Straits, Steely Dan, The Who, Berlin. Anyway, stories. There'll be more coming for you.
Okay.
Yes, go
I'll
ahead.
shut up.
Go ahead. Engineers are known to do that. Rosalie, you are from Monterey, and you've talked about sneaking into the pop festival in '67, then running away to the Haight-Ashbury for the Summer of Love. I guess you went back to Monterey at some point because you got onto radio there just before coming to Kfog?
Yeah, I started in freeform progressive underground radio at a station called KLRB in Carmel, where there were 6,000 LPs, and you just went around with your hands, and your hands would kind of magically decide what you would pull out and play. And the formats we went through in those days, from freeform to, okay, all the albums are in bins, and you have to play off the front, sign it, and put it in the back. And then with Logan, we went to the card catalog, where you had cards in categories, and you would sign your little grid of your day part on the front and put the card in the back. And then on to computerized playlists, which actually are a lot of fun if you're allowed the kind of freedom we were allowed with them. But what was the question again, Ben?
I think she was diverted by the Canadian national anthem playing over here.
Yeah, someone was playing some old Kfog music on their cell phone, I think I heard.
A Raptors fan.
Another format switch.
Yes, so when I was doing middays full-time at a station in Monterey, when I came to do weekend overnights, courtesy of Dave Logan, I was making the same amount of money. You could make as much in San Francisco, Market 5 at that point, I think, as a whole week's worth of work in Market 135, Monterey.
All right, thank you. I'm jump back because I do want to do it kind of chronologically, and that brings us back to Mr. Logan. And that means I wanted to bring in one of the people from Michigan that you had worked with before who made a tremendous impact on Bay Area radio, beginning as a part-timer and Sunday Night 80 show. Can you tell us a bit about the thinking behind bringing your friend Mike Slavko here?
Well, he was just incredible. And we celebrated him here last year. Friend of mine, for many years. He was doing a show in a college station in Michigan, out by where we were, and about the only people who listened were bad acid casualties and a bunch of cows. But somebody told me about him, and I listened to it, and I just said, it's like Wolfman Jack on acid. And I got to know him. He was working on the AM playing adult contemporary as Mike Richards. And one night he's on the air, and I'm in there in the newsroom, and I'm firing his carts from the newsroom, fucking with him. And he's losing his mind, but recovering. And I loved that about him. And so I said, you really ought to bring your show over to the FM. And so he started doing the Sunday Night Idiot Show, 6 hours of dung. Yeah. And Judy Crum, Mike's wife, has been putting a lot of these online. You really should listen to them. They're unbelievable. But he came to be a production director because Dave couldn't handle everything by himself and be midday guy and do 10 at 10 and kind of be the, architectural soul of the station. So Mike came in to help with production. And then I said, well, we're going to put you on Sunday nights from 7 to midnight. And the first time I put him on the air, I got calls from everybody going, have you lost your mind? And I said, be patient, this works. Be patient, this works. And in short time, there was one book where he was #1, 12 plus, 7 to midnight on Sunday. And then we, after Lee Baby Sims left, we hired a guy named Don DeWolf to do mornings. He lasted 4 days.
Oh, jeez.
Tremendously talented guy who's been doing mornings in San Diego for 20-something years as the #1 show.
And he's here today, Logan.
No, he's a great guy. We didn't prepare him well, and that was the problem. And so we were stuck. We didn't know what to do, and so Lee and I were up on the Marin Headlands with Dung, smoking a joint, and we just kind of looked at him and said, it's your time, and so we did, and it was him and Scoop, and then it really all came together when this guy in the hat, who 34 years ago today did his audition on Kfog, Kevin the Rat.
Yeah. Listener.
And the reason we got Kevin on was because I was driving across the Golden Gate Bridge. I lived in Mill Valley, and I'm coming in one morning, and Dung's on the air, and the 49ers were obviously very big, and Dung goes, 49ers win, baby, 38-21, and Joe Montana, 4 interceptions. Way to go, Joe. And I'm shocked. And actually, no cell phones this time. I pulled over to the pay phone at the Golden Gate Bridge, and I said, are you telling me you don't know the difference between a touchdown and an interception? He goes, I'm not into sports, So we came back and invented a contest to audition to be Kfog's sports guy. And a guy named New York Vinny was one of our finalists, and he's had a great long career. Yeah. But when Kevin came on, it was magic. And he did his first show, and I called him on the hotline, and the phone rings, and Dung hands the phone and goes, this is Logan. And Kevin doesn't know what to make of it. And I said, whatever you just did, do that for the rest of your life.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And now he has. And he is the dean of Bay Area Sportscasters, my dear friend, and a great talent.
All right, Kevin. So, Dung Boy was not a sports nut, but he certainly was a music nut, a life nut. And so, Mr. Brown, how about #1 for Ed Dung?
Lee Michaels on Kfog 104.5, Fogheads. We're going to open up the door to the Kfog kitchen and feed the king on Breakfast with Elvis. Coming up next.
Hey, wait.
Hello, pizza man, pizza. Yeah, this is the Elvis. Won't you bring me over? No, make it 6, double cheese. Yeah, I'm home.
Play some rock and roll!
Tonight, baby, everything's jumping. You should too. Give me some on that fun line, baby. 775 KFOG if you need to rock with Dunga tonight. Hey.
Hey, way.
Yeah.
All right. Renee,
Hi.
you joined in the early 90s in various roles, but I'm wondering, I suppose really the major time frame for you is the morning show. With Maury and Gang.
Mm-hmm.
And you and Irish Greg and everybody really did interviews, but I believe you and Irish Greg booked most of them. Who were some of your more memorable visits?
Good Lord. All of these memories flood back more when people remind me of things. Greg would be the one to know have a memory of every single thing. But we talked to everybody from Barack Obama. We had in the studio Tammy Faye Baker. That was a big one, right? That was probably the one. Dave always knew how amazing Tammy Faye was, but we had to be convinced. And she came in and she was pretty phenomenal. Russell Crowe, we made him eat Vegemite. He didn't like that so much, yeah. God, so many people. Peter, you have a memory for this.
Well, when you'd be there and Elvis Costello was sitting next to you playing his guitar, that was pretty special.
Yeah. So,
and Greg was able to ask the disarming questions in his lovely Irish accent, really pithy, hard questions, but people were just so charmed by his accent that they would give forth stuff that these celebrities had, I felt like they had never shared that
And he
stuff
also was the
before.
guy behind the scenes, so he'd shove out the question and then go run away, and the rest would be like, ha, ha, ha. So how you feel about that? But yeah, no, we had interesting guests, and it was just fantastic.
Well, let's ask the anchor of the show. We have a roving mic, I believe, that Mr. Shapiro has access to. Dave Maury came in from, where are you from?
Palm Springs.
Oh, Palm Springs. I should think of you in Michigan still. But Dave is here from Palm Springs. Dave Maury, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Remember, Dave, welcome, and writing a story based on a visit to the morning show and seeing you as kind of the conductor as well as the anchor. And although you were the kind of star of the show, you never acted that way. No. And you would, one of the things you did was just kind of orchestrate the interview. Was that
your
perceived role?
These guys, Renee and Greg and Peter, especially Greg and Renee and Peter, they were the ones, I could pretty much open the interview and hand it off to them, and then they'd take care of the pithy, serious stuff. Do you remember when you were talking about favorite moments, if I might, remember the guy, and I can't remember the song or his name, but he's very dark, and we got him, and he did a song, and he forgot the first line of the song.
Oh, Ray LaMontagne.
That's it. Trouble. And he started again and remembered it right. Yeah. And then at the end of it, Greg looked at him and said, "Wow, is that very uncomfortable for you when you?" And LaMontagne looked him straight in the eyes, live on the air. This is before we knew how to work the delay, so we never used it. Right. And said, "You mean when I fuck it up?" No dump button to push.
No.
I got the long memo about how to use that the next day. But these guys, I just I ran the board and, introduced and outroed and stuff.
But also edited us. I mean, Dave is the master at, without saying, "No, that's stupid," looking at you and going, Nobody can appreciate that, and taking us to a higher level. So working with Dave is just...
Well, and can I just say, he would set the tone. Dave just has fun playing radio, whether it's on his pirate station or on a radio station. And,
station.
No, but he, the piece he did on Bill Ruck was just so indicative. And...
Well, that was the whole an idea, and not only Bill Ruck and other people at the station, but the audience people too. We brought him in on stuff like that, and that's what I think made the station feel part of the Bay Area, almost family, if that's not too sappy.
Another part of his genius.
Can I just add one quick story to that about Dave's genius was, all that stuff with Don Pardo was just in a session with Don on an ISDN line. You know, he wasn't with us in the studio. And my favorite one, besides the Ruck one there, was when he got Don drunk at the Christmas party.
Christmas party, yeah.
And Dave took all these outtakes, and Don sounded like he was blasted. And Don worked with NBC, and we were an NBC Source affiliate, so we got to use Don. And we used him a lot. And then I got a call from NBC saying, hey, yeah, somebody said Don Pardo was drunk on your air today. And I said, Don's not even here. And they said, no, we got some calls that Don was drunk. And so I said, let me talk to Frank Cody, who was the guy who's charged. I said, Frank, that's Dave Morey messing around with outtakes. It's hilarious. He goes, gee, I hate to ask this. Could you send me a copy of that? And we had taped it, and so I sent it to him. And about 2 weeks later, I got back this lovely note from Don Pardo, who loved it. Thought it was the best thing he'd heard somebody do with him since I think he recalled the Wizard days back when we were doing live comedy. But it was those kind of things that Dave orchestrated, whether it was as 10 at 10 and the Midday Guy or with the morning show after I left. But that's the genius of him.
The other genius of the morning show is that with 4 people, everybody took a persona. Peter was like the family guy, nice, affable family guy. Irish Greg was the curmudgeon. Renee was the iconoclast. She was just like, let's go gorilla. Let's do a rebel thing. And Dave was the neutral conductor behind the scenes. And everybody knew how to raise their hands at the right time, how you guys
Still
did
do
that,
it at
so
home.
that you
Can
never
I say
stepped
something?
on each other. Yeah.
Yes, Renee?
No, I still do it. I'm always like, oh, sorry.
How about Peter in all of this? He comes in as the news guy. And again, through that magic of the ensemble and under the direction of the conductor, Mr. Morey, you become more than news. You become just a part of the flow of the morning show.
Yeah, so I did 8 years at KBCO, which was like kind of a pioneer of this adult album alternative format. And then that ended, and my wife's a native San Franciscan. We wanted to get back, and I came back and was able to be part-time filling in for Marshall Phillips, the news guy. And then after 9 months, Paul Marsleck, the program director, and my friend John Bradley from Colorado, who was consulting the station, took me to dinner. We were actually playing pool, and they said, we want you to be, on the morning show full time, and my game went to hell. I lost that billiards match, but I ended up having a great 18-year run. And Dave was just so welcoming. At the beginning, I would prepare my newscasts right outside the studio door and run in every half hour and deliver it. And after a while, it was like, no, come on in, play with us. And all right. So, and it clicked pretty early on. And I'll tell the story. Dwight Walker, the general manager, walked up to Dave and I one morning and said, we had kind of hit the ratings holy grail, number one, 2554. And I just couldn't help myself. I grabbed Dave in a bear hug and lifted him off the ground, which was a highlight. But also just back to the fun he would have. One time we realized that Tom Shane, the Tom Shane commercials.
Tom Shane.
We lifted out one word he was saying there, or 2 words, and Dave went into the Rolling Stones, and all of a sudden you hear Tom Shane say, the Stones. It was that kind of, we just had a lot of fun playing radio. So my job as the news guy was just to be there to kind of bounce off the other stuff, and then to do news kind of in an NPR on a rock station kind of style. And one compliment I've gotten over the years was a lot of people first heard about 9/11 from me, and that they appreciated that I stayed calm, and I don't know how I did and got through the morning, but that was quite a responsibility. But it was really an honor, and it started with Dave being so welcoming, and it was just, we had some great years there.
Was the occasional Scoop Nisker part of the mix there when you were there?
Yeah, he would come in and do his thing.
occasionally.
Go into the Miles Davis bed, and he'd go in and start doing his
If I can say just one little thing about Peter, when I came on and got to see Peter at work, because I'd listened to the show before I came on, and to see Peter be able to take in information on his computer screen, type the news, still be engaged in what was happening, not only in the room, but phone calls that were coming in. I think the first week I was like, how the fuck do you do that? Like he never missed a beat, he never missed a report, and it was fascinating to me, and that was the moment I knew I was with the total pros between Dave and Peter and the way they worked.
You were all multitasking geniuses, all of you, especially Irish Greg booking the talent, commandeering the interviews, helping the flow of the show, keeping things on track. Jude Heller kept things on track.
Right.
Jude Heller joined Kfog.
Yay. Wow.
In 1992, Jude joined and replaced none other than Kenny Wardell, who had done quite a lot with world-class rock. Jude, what was the immediate situation at the station when you joined in? How was the station doing?
Wow. When I joined the station, I actually joined the station as the temporary promotion director. We hadn't flipped the format yet. I was talking to our general manager, Dwight Walker, and he said that there was going to be a format change and we were going to go to AAA. Wasn't quite sure what that was, but it sounded great. And he said, and we're bringing in a program director from Chicago, some crazy guy named Greg Sulk. So I came on as the temporary promotion director until Greg was hired, until we could really meet each other and see if we could work together. And it was a great beginning. If you could imagine inheriting and starting out with the beginnings of AAA radio and this kind of talented staff, and what the challenges were, like how do you take fogheads and make them registered fogheads? How do you take a very colorful station like Kfog and visualize it? I was there when, there was no internet, and all of a sudden there were websites, and we had to visualize the radio station. It was really interesting, inventing things that that gave the station the stationality. Like, how do you take what was on the air and take it out on the road? And that was a group thing. So that's what I inherited when I walked in the door.
One of the things that Kenny Wardell did was to help bring in Joe Montana, armchair quarterback, to the morning show and bring in people like Mike Schumann to join in with Kevin the Rat. One of the things you're credited with the most is the series of albums called Live from the Archives, which raised over $3 million over the years for food banks around the Bay. How did that come about, and why did you include Ray LaMontagne's?
The whole idea of Kfog Live from the Archives was to select a charity that that everyone could agree on, and you can imagine we arm wrestled over it, but no one could argue about feeding people that are going without food. So food banks was a natural. Plus, there were like amazing food banks in every market, every county in this market. So kind of a no-brainer. What we were trying to build was, because we had such special guests on the Kfog morning show, then we would, I would rent recording studios, and we'd bring artists in to record things that were just for Kfog, that hadn't been published anywhere. And the whole idea of that is to have all of these rare tracks that you couldn't buy anywhere else. The only place that you could find them published was on Kfog Live from the Archives. The nice thing about it is, when we told Fogheads about this, and the project was built to be self-liquidating, and the station did not make one penny on Live from the Archives. That's how we built it, which was great. And I think now, even the project, of course, continued after I left the station with Sherry Nelson, and the proceeds from Live from the Archives, I think, are over $6 million for Bay Area food banks.
Wow. When was it that we would look forward to every weekend for a specific reason on Kfog? The Welcome to the Weekend. Was that early 90s also? Jude, was that your time there?
Oh, the Weekend Salute.
The Weekend Salute.
No, that was
Sure.
in the 80s. We started,
It was started.
That was definitely when we were there, the first generation. Yeah.
What are we talking about? Mr. Brown, how about number 5?
Get ready for fun.
See how great it feels to cut loose, huh? I hope you have a really nice weekend.
So anything goes. Anything.
Whoa!
Does it feel good to be out of there?
Nothing matters but the weekend.
Attention, this is an emergency broadcast.
Thank God it's Friday.
Everybody have great weekends.
Let the good times roll.
Sounds like heap big fun.
All right!
Your weekend Kfog begins now. This is Kfog.
Go ahead, enjoy yourself.
I smoke 2 joints in the morning. I smoke 2 joints at night.
Like 25 years,
I smoke 2 joints in the afternoon. It makes me feel alright.
Tried to stop playing it.
I smoke 2 joints before I smoke 2 joints, and then I smoke 2 more. Oh, my daddy!
Oh, yeah. They re-recorded it now as we vape 2 times in the morning. You vape 2 times a night. Yes,
No,
I
we
saw
got a letter from somebody who said their daughter said, "Who's Joyce?" And they said, "What?" I spoke to Joyce. You know, yeah.
Spoke to Joyce in the morning.
I think that's how most parents explained the reference.
Did I see a hand down there, Bill?
I just want to point something out here, because in my mind, Dave Morey is not just a nice guy, but a genius. That montage you heard was not done on a computer. It was not even done on a multi-track. We didn't have multi-tracks. Dave did that with layers and layers and layers, doing it the hard way.
Wow.
Yeah. There you
Razor
go.
blades and tape.
What? M. Dung did it?
Well, I think Mike did the first one, and that was a later. Yeah, that was a later version.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I think Mike did the first one with you as well.
Yeah, Maury doesn't get enough credit.
No. Those 2 guys did that together, and that Smoke 2 Joints record, and we brought that from Grand Rapids.
The
We used to
Joys.
play that and a song by Jeff Muldaur called "I'm Not Drunk, I'm Just Drinking." That was the Friday Salute.
Then came the weekend, you're blissed out, and you are in the mood for some laid-back music, and along comes Rosalie. Rosalie, how did Acoustic Sunrise come along?
Interestingly, the colorful program director Greg Salk, who just completely transformed Kfog in his 18-month tenure, decided I was music director. He said, "You're going to do an acoustic show on Sunday mornings. Just find everything kind of unplugged and play that." So I thought, oh, another time suck of an assignment. But I started putting it together and found a love for that kind of music. And in the MTV Unplugged days, it was just starting to come into its own, and the VH1 days. So I started developing a playlist and finding other material and using the archives tracks, which were largely unplugged because we'd have huge bands come in and have to strip down and play semi-acoustic in the play space. The play space was a huge part of Kfog, that live performing space we had that was dead in a good way, that good dead sound that just soaked up all the sound. So I found a passion for it and a reason to get up at 5 a.m. on Sundays. For 27 years, the show ran, and people would call up, and when email came into being, people started emailing from Brazil, from the Philippines, from McMurdo Station in Antarctica. This group of fogheads were everywhere. Send us a picture.
Rosalie, you were recognized by your voice by people who would tell you that they changed their schedules.
It was an appointment listening. I had a nurse. I went to the ER for chest pain, which was nothing once, but the nurse said after a while, "I know who you are." And I want you to know that they know not to schedule me on Sundays. I have seniority, and when they say Sundays, I go, no, that's Acoustic Sunrise. I'm going to be there. And the 2 greatest, I think, compliments any DJ can get is, "Stop! I can't get out of the car. I've been sitting in the car in my driveway for 40 minutes now. Would you play a rotten record?" And, the ones that they would meet you and say, "Babe, you are costing me a fortune. Everything you play, I gotta buy it."
Another great feature.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rosie. Of Kfog for a good number of years was the annual Kaboom.
Yeah.
I hear that that had happened in other markets, but Kfog obviously brought something special to it, and it certainly engaged the entire crew, the staff. Jude, you want to lead off with how that came to be?
Credit where credit is due. KGB in San Diego did a fireworks show after a baseball game, and I went down to see it with a friend who produced it, and it was beautiful because it was fireworks choreographed to like a rock soundtrack, and she said, what would you do differently? And I go, well, let's see. I wouldn't stage it after a baseball game, and I'd put it in its own place, and we'd have a free concert, and we'd have production values, and we'd have it over San Francisco Bay, and we'd have concessions, and then we'd have sponsors, and it got crazy.
It got
huge. It did get huge.
500,000 people spread out.
It started in 1994. Boy, talk about a group effort. Wendy Pearson was with me on the first Kaboom. It was called Kfog Sky Concert.
Yes, Sky Concert.
And the third year that we did it, it was Sky Concert for 3 years. And we got a cease and desist from a fireworks company that had used that name, and they proved first use by, I think, 2 months before we did our first Sky Concert. So true story, I went into Paul Marszalek's office, who was the program director then, and said, we have to rename the Sky Concert. He goes, just get me a list. And I went back in my office and did a list of 20 names, and he looked at it and he goes, Kfog Kaboom, that's what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. That's how we changed the name.
It just beat out O'Day.
Can I say, Ben, one of my favorite moments from that, when Dave and I for a few years kind of did the pre-fireworks hosting, and at one point we got it into our head to have everybody, and everybody's listening on their radios, right? And we told everybody along the waterfront in apartments on the count of 3 to turn their lights on and off. And they did it, and you had the whole skyline, all the lights going on and off in the apartments and stuff. It was amazing.
The power of radio.
Also, Scoop's invocation, Scoop and Dave and Peter, Scoop would do this rousing, poetic, Zen, Cosmo, just gonzo, poetic, from the macro down to the micro invocation, and then we would strike up the chords of Joe Satriani's Flying in a Blue Dream, which was always the instrumental, because you had to go back to the studio and get the music from on the pier, and it was always a rough transition. So we had this one instrumental, and the hair on the back of my arms would go up, and all of us felt, when that music finally cranked up, this like relief, because we pounded Kaboom every year for like 3 months. You guys did it year round. The day after Kaboom, you started on next year's. The pounding it on the air, and the concert beforehand, and it just let down, and then just let the fireworks wash over you. It was, without exception, the proudest I've ever been was during the fireworks of Kaboom.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
One year for April Fool's Day, we said that Kaboom had happened the weekend before, and Paul McCartney played it, and people were totally believing it. They were so bummed they had missed it.
Fake news. Okay, just one weird off. Rosalie was commenting about getting Bill Ruck onto the panel, and she said that Bill might have a couple of particular stories triggered by these cues. So, Bill, listen to this. Magic cookies. Turn on the TV, put on your helmet, and enjoy the ride. Or, where is the fucking piano? Or, open the fucking door. Does any of this inspire a story from you?
They're all good stories. And I don't know which, and there's a few other ones that I would,
Pick one.
I thought about Kaboom. Okay, it's complicated because we had a soundtrack that had time code that had to be transmitted out to the barge so that everything would be synchronized. And we drew straws, and Bonnie Hong on my staff won the trip on the barge. So she was actually on the barge with the equipment, watching everything go foomp. Anyway, on Hawthorne Street, the studios were on the west side, Kaboom was going on the east side, so we all traipsed down to the end. We're watching that, and then the tape jammed. And so I forget who the part-timer was, but he had a bad leg, and he's limping down the hall. And I said, get out of the way, I can run faster than you can. Anyway, that's a kaboom story.
Yeah.
I think Raul Velez tells the open the door story much better than I can, but I'll tell the story which kind of follows on what Rosalie was doing with Acoustic Sunrise, because they instituted a program called Jazz Brunch.
Yeah.
And it was a follow-on to Acoustic Sunrise.
Trish Robbins, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, Tony wanted a sponsor, and months go by, and the sales people were getting beat up to have a sponsor. Finally, one of the sales guys came and said, I got a sponsor, That's great. And then afterwards he said, oh, and by the way, I promised them 3 live jazz brunch shows. And Dave said, no. And then it went back and forth. And I think finally Tony explained to him something along the lines of sleeping with the fishes. And Dave said, okay. So we then found a place. And this is how complicated these simple events can be. We found a place called Julius' Castle, and went down there and checked it out. Everything was great. Phone lines, space, everything great. So we're all set up, and as we're headed towards that weekend, I started asking, I need a set list and a stage plot, because that tells you how everything is, how you deal with that. And I was told, don't worry about it. Well, no, finally I pushed really hard, and I was told, Bill, just cool. It's just keyboards, drums, bass, and rhythm. I said, okay, fine. So I get there early in the morning. I'm not an early person, but I got there early Sunday morning, got all the equipment schlepped up there. Everything is sort of set up. And this lady starts walking through the dining room. And to describe her as rode hard and put up wet would be a compliment for the way she looked. And she's muttering to herself. And so I went over and said, can I help you? And she says, yeah, where's the fucking piano? And I said, excuse me? She said, I'm here to play a piano for your thing, and where's the piano? And I said, gee, I was told keyboards. She looks at me as if I was a complete drooling idiot and said, I play acoustic piano. Where is it? Well, there isn't one. So we had to cancel the jazz brunch. John Rivers got stuck with dealing with all the upset people. So 2 weeks later, we did the second jazz brunch, and this time I got the stage plot, and everything was cool. We're live on the air, the band is jamming, and the cops show up. Turns out that Julius Castle did not have a live music permit, and so the cops shut us down because all the neighbors on Coit Tower pulled some strings.
Wow.
So we never did the third live jazz brunch.
All right. Thank you, Bill. We have only a few minutes left, so I want to get to the portion that I call the decline and fall. But before I do that, let me just ask Logan from afar. I'm sure you watched how your station was doing, ups and downs.
It was our station, not my station.
Yeah, your station. How it was doing from afar and from closer by. Were the ups and downs to be expected in radio?
Yes.
Because it's also cyclical?
And look at it, the station's been around for how long now? 37 years, so it's wonderful that it still exists. I would say a couple things. As I looked at it from afar, obviously a lot of people go through there and many program directors, but there are 2 guys that really need to be called out and acknowledged, who I think saved Kfog at a time when it was important to have an advocate for that. And one of them was Paul Marzalak. Paul worked in Chicago and was a competitor of mine when I was at the Loop. He was at XRT. And Paul really came in and gave that station direction at a time when it needed focus and it needed a musical guiding hand to take care of that. And then following him was a guy named Dave Benson. Dave Benson had been the music director at the Loop in Chicago when I went back the second time, and we let him go. And he ended up becoming a consultant and ended up at Kfog afterwards. And it was Dave who presided longer than any individual PD.
9 years.
As the head of Kfog. And he really guided that ship through a lot of treacherous waters. And until he hit the Cumulus Rock, probably would have been there for a long time. But Paul and Dave, who were competitors of mine in Chicago and friends of mine, really deserve a hand for keeping that radio station going.
Thank you, Dave.
Those were the salad years.
Thank you. So the decline I'm talking about began with that man right there. The nerve of him to retire. That was in 2008, and it was downhill from there. Good people filled his chair, but then a cash-strapped Cumulus dismissed Dave Benson, and then Tony Salvador.
In the morning.
Dennis Constantine became PD, began shifting the music. Listeners were not happy. And then people were starting to be let go. And young morning crew came in and out. People, fogheads, were not happy with that. Next boss, Bill Pugh, brought some people back, but still wasn't the same. Then came 2014, Pugh was gone, and now came somebody else. And so it was just crazy. And I want to ask, and then the latest was in 2016, Cumulus fired numerous staffers from KGO and Kfog. Renee, Annalisa, Webster, Dred Scott were out. So was Acoustic Sunrise. The new PD, Brian, brought it back. But in June of last year, it was canceled again. By that time, the music had shifted to alt-rock. The morning show was the Woody Show out of L.A. Thanks a lot, Dave. And so I'd like to ask the three nearest to me, because you probably all went through that convolution. Renee?
What can I tell you? It was crazy. I think I went through 7 program directors in the last 4 years, was it? It was just chaos. It was a revolving door of people, and every time they thought, the next one's going to save us. And each time, like, the numbers were just getting worse and worse. And I think in that time period, I had everybody shift at that point. I did 10 at 10, not as well as you, but I tried. Tried to steal your audio. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, it was rough. And then I think I was like a battered wife. Do you feel that way a little bit, Rosalie?
Yeah, like abused people that that keep coming back, but why?
You're like, you think it's the only thing you can do, so you're hanging on for dear life, and then when you're finally out, you're like, holy fuck, I should have left when Dave left. Glad you did. I was like thinking.
Now, Peter was not fired, but he was transferred.
Yeah, they switched me over to KGO, and sometimes with Cumulus, I felt like it was like Mel Brooks's The Producers, where they go, if we intentionally produce a bad show, then it'll all be fine. They one Cumulus story. At one point, they said, "All right, we're going to run ads for diet pills," and we told Cumulus, "Well, that's not really a Kfog kind of thing." And they said, "Well, the guy's company, the guy is Lou Dickey, one of the Cumulus brothers, personal financial advisor. You are going to run the ad for diet pills." So somebody from the morning show had to take diet pills. I volunteered, and it was fine, and I lost some weight. But and in the end, though, they didn't run the ads, But just the decisions, and they got the station. It was like buying a house for a really top dollar right when the market crashes.
Yep,
they had that going against them, but also I think they didn't realize, they didn't get Kfog. They didn't realize what made it special, and they ran it into the ground.
Well, it sure was special. Thank you to the panel. We're going to give away. Dave Morey is going to do one more bit for us. He's going to give away the 6 CD set live from the archives. And so look at your tickets now.
While he's pulling the number, Rosalie had something really good to say here.
We don't. No time. Sorry. We have to get out of here.
Oh.
Save it for the podcast.
There you go. Yeah, that's what we ought to do.
Great.
Yeah. Get Bill Rock
Engineer.
over there. Yeah.
Do you have that microphone on?
Oh.
Shout it out. Shout it out.
Oh.
You got the voice.
This is gone.
Hello.
There.
All right.
Wow.
All right. And the number is, I don't have glasses.
Thank you.
I don't have my glasses. Can we trust you not to lie?
Love that.
Kevin the Rat will read the number.
One moment. Somebody made some plans here.
3666981.
Anybody? Anyone?
Someone has to have that.
Another. Does the winner have to be present?
I would think so.
And sound of mind.
And nobody?
Yes.
Go.
Kev?
Uh-oh.
3667008.
I had 9.
Yay, Lisa got it.
Lisa Carr for the win.
All right, back to Len and Steve. Thank you again, panel.
Right.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ben. Great stories. All right, what were you going to say? Well done.
Yeah, what were you?
I'll be real.
Small and mid-market stations, and they.
I'll be real brief here. We have we usually do a plaque presentation for this event, and we were supposed to have a bunch of plaques here for folks to take, but it turns out we only have one. They got lost in the mail. So the California Historical Radio Society and its Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame are proud to induct KFOG 104.5 FM San Francisco, the Foghead era, as the 2019 Barhoff Legendary Station in recognition of broadcasting excellence and innovation by the CHRS Board of Directors, June 12, 2019. And since there's only one of these, and I'm using my own discretion, I'm going to give it to Dave. And then Dave can pass it around to whoever after he's held on to it at his place for a while.
Yeah. All right.
We're all coming to visit it, Dave.
Yeah. Group photo.
Here is KFOG General Manager Tony Salvador.
Thanks. I want to talk about Kfog. All of us here think we've got a pretty decent radio station.
Pack up the plantation live, the name of the LP, the track. So you want to be a rock and roll star. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers with M on Kfog. End it. Come on, guys. Yeah. Bam. Yeah.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock and time for the Kfog Cavalcade of News with Scoop Nisker.
Fogheads, it's time for more tales of civilization and its discontents. Tales told by an idiot. And I'll be back in 10 with traffic. Now here's M with music, Kfog 104.5.
Ow. Lee Michaels on Kfog 104.5, Fogheads. We're going to open up the door to the Kfog kitchen and feed the king on Breakfast with Elvis. Coming up next.
Hey, way.
Hello, pizza man, pizza. Yeah, this is the Elvis. Won't you bring me over a couple large pies? Don't make it 3. Don't make it 6. Double cheese.
Dire Straits off Brothers in Arms. I'm Kfog 104.5. Emma's here, and so is El Scupo. 7:30 right now. Here's Fog Headlines, then the wreck. Beautiful stuff, baby. Simon and Garfunkel are featured tonight on the Sunday Night Idiot Show. Hey, Kfog 104.5 here, baby. This is Dung Ao. Ha! Tonight, baby, everything's jumping. You should too. Give me some on that fun line, baby. 775 KFOG if you need to rock with Dunga tonight. Hey.
For that trip to Japan, where you'd also win an Acura Integra, I've got another name to give. Japan is the destination for Kfog Getaway number 7. This one is really special. Visits to the tradition that is Japan.
Kfog 104.5.
11:30 tonight, Kfog Rarities with Bill Kafuri, and tonight it's Big Country Captured Live, recorded at a performance in Scotland. They do Fields of Fire in front of many, many people, and we'll hear it tonight at 11:30 on Kfog Rarities with Bill Kafuri. Good thing you look so good in mittens.
Kfog 104.5.